I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
This is the Janine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Janine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Janine Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Joining us now is General Keith Kellogg, who is President Trump's special envoy to Ukraine. Of course, he's a highly decorated retired 3-star Army general. He was National Security Advisor to Mike Pence. He also served as Chief of Staff to the National Security Council. And right now, he's in the middle of one of the hottest issues going on in the world, and that is what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. So, General, thank you so much for joining us today. Look, General Keith Kellogg, this war has been going on for 3 years. Where are we now?
Yeah, Judge, first, thanks for having me. It's good, always great to be with you.
Thank you.
I think we finally reached a point, because we're actually talking, that we can see a glimmer of hope that this war is going to end. And I think that is because of Donald J. Trump. You know, before this, for the last 3 years, we haven't got the sides talking. President Biden didn't do that at all. President Trump has done that. And that's the first thing you've got to do, is start talking. So last week, we were in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and we actually had both sides come together. Now, it was a limited meeting. It was only to discuss the Black Sea, but at least we got the sides talking, not with each other. That's the next step. We get them to start talking with each other, which is critical. But at least we're starting to lay out the issues. You know, very honestly, Judge, we're pretty comfortable that we know what the issues are. But we want them to say it, and where we want to go next after this limited discussion that we had in Saudi Arabia when we talked Black Sea issues, the next is to get to a comprehensive discussion on, okay, what are your red lines from both sides? And to get what we call a term sheet meaning, okay, Ukraine, these are your things that you want to see happen. Russia, these are the things you want to see happen. And by the way, neither side is going to be happy, because they're not going to get all they want. Mm-hmm. And then you bring them together and eventually have a cessation of hostilities going into a ceasefire. And I do believe once you get to a ceasefire, then I don't think this thing's going to start up again in the near term, because we'll have some type of security guarantees. So the process is going on. We're at day 66 with this administration. Mm-hmm. You know, we're hoping to have a ceasefire probably within day 100 on both sides, get a comprehensive ceasefire, and then we build onto a peace treaty from there. So I would tell you, I think the first steps have been held, and I think I'm always an optimist, and optimistically we'll have something start to develop in the near term.
Well, you know, the truth is that after 3 years and cities being destroyed, people being killed, I would think that both sides would want to put an end to this. I mean, Ukraine is pretty much destroyed. As I understand it. I mean, I could be wrong, but let's start with there's a ceasefire in the Black Sea right now, which is, as I know you've said publicly, is a great first step. But is Russia going to leave the occupied territories that it holds in Ukraine? Is that the whole issue right now, General Keith Kellogg?
That will probably be the major issue of what he's going to talk about, Judge. And look, it's because really, about 18% of Ukraine is being occupied by the Russians right now. And there's 4 major, what they call oblasts. Think of them as states. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got Luhansk in the north, then you've got Donetsk, then you've got Zaporizhia, and you've got Kherson. Those are the 4 in conflict. I leave you Crimea out, because that's kind of a non-starter right now to talk about.
Right.
That one's actually gone.
Right.
But here's what you have to do with it. It's almost like you use the example we had in the Baltics after World War II, when we had there was something they called the Wells Doctrine. And the Wells Doctrine was, look, we acknowledge that you have occupied this territory, but we don't agree that you annex this territory. So it's de facto versus de jure. Mm-hmm. And we kind of say, well, this is going to be de facto. Now, only one of the 4 provinces or oblast states is fully occupied. That's the northern one. And that's kind of saying, okay, they've got that all. But the rest of the other 3 are for the most part, contested. The Russians want all four. We need to give them all four. The Ukrainians need to. They're not going to go there. So our take is probably going to be you're going to have a basically line of contact freeze in place where you're at. And that'll be the heavy discussion because you're absolutely right. The biggest issue is going to be territory. And the Ukrainians are not willing to give up territory that the Russians have not seized. And the Russians are not making major advances. They're moving in yards, in meters. They're not moving in miles. And, if the Russians were truly successful, Judge, they'd be in Kyiv right now, or they'd be in the Dnieper River right now, and they're not.
Right.
So I think both sides, and you said something really critical. The fact of the matter is both sides are tired. The fact is the Russians have probably lost in the range of 350,000 dead. The Ukrainians lost in the range of 130,000 dead in soldiers, and I'm not counting the infrastructure or civilian deaths at all. And both of them are kind of saying, okay, how do we get out of this? I believe that. But, and this is the big but, the Ukrainians are more willing right now to go there than the Russians are because the Russians are masters of negotiation. They're going to try to delay, defer until they get a better deal. And this president is not going to tolerate that. This president is going to say, look, you're going to have to come to the table because he understands the criticality of getting this thing done, primarily because you got to stop the killing. And he's absolutely right in that.
He is so right about that. And, the amazing thing is, if Donald Trump were not president right now, General Keith Kellogg, the truth is that America would be sending billions of dollars to Ukraine to keep up the fight with a goal that no one, has any idea what that goal is. But I just want to go back to this for a second. If you talk about de jure, is Ukraine... They're not willing to let go of those 4 occupied areas.
Well, I think, here's what they probably are not, but it's going to be on negotiation because the Russians actually have troops on the ground. This is one of those, that's the reason I use the Baltics as an example after World War II when the Soviets actually occupied all 3 of them.
Right.
And the 3 Baltic countries. And we basically said, no, we don't agree to that. Over time, we'll get them back. It's the same thing that, if you go back actually in the mid-'50s with Chancellor Konrad Adenauer of Germany, when he wanted to hold Germany, he wanted to unify Germany, but he knew he wasn't going to get it over time. But he looked at the long game. So I think Zelensky understands that now. And as long as we don't say, okay, we acknowledge the fact that Russia now has annexed them, they are part of Russia, I think he's willing to go there just to stop this fight.
Okay. Now, today, I believe Zelensky, I'm not sure where he is. I think he's in France somewhere. He's saying that Putin is going to die soon. What is the point of that? Is that a strategy? Is that, is he got a crystal ball? What's going on there?
I think it's a hope. It's on his wish list.
But it's a dumb thing to say, isn't it?
Well, I think he's talking about his age and he's older than he is. But look, knowing Zelensky like I know Zelensky, I'm not surprised by those comments. But it's almost a throwaway comment. Putin's not going to go anywhere in the near term that we're aware of.
Yeah,
But he's playing for the long game, not the short game.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about Zelensky there, but I'm not gonna go there, General. So I'd like to move on for the few minutes that we have left, and discuss the that Signal chat issue that everybody's having a fit about. The idea. It seems to me that in that chat, Pete Hegseth apparently said. In one of the team updates, he said, you should have a statement of conclusions with taskings per the president's guidance this morning in your high side inboxes. So it appears that Hegseth is saying, we're not going to talk about classified information on this Signal chat, but if you want to talk classified, go to the high side. That's the classified stuff, correct?
When they talk high side, the high side is your secret, or it's a confidential, secret, top secret, and what they call SCI, secure compartment of information, secret compartment of information. They do that. But Judge, here's what I wish they would do on this whole Signal chat. The president, follow the president's lead. The president said, mistake was made, should have been done, thank you, move on. They keep digging a hole. I wish they'd just shut up, and they're not, and they're compounding it. It's like, guys, you've got a great president who really understands communications. And he's giving you the lead on how to do this. and you're not following it. I just don't know why they're not. It drives me nuts. And I will tell you, I'm going to be very honest with you, judges. The information that Pete gave out on that channel should not have been given out to the group. It was one of those, don't go there. Because I will tell you, you never want to get to a position where you even question is something classified or not classified, whatever you want to call it, because now they're parsing words, and they're just making the problem greater and greater. A statement of conclusion, when they do that, that's kind of parlor talk here in the White House, where you come together with a document that says this is the end state, this is what actually happened. It's sort of like, for lack of a better term, an executive summary sheet on what actually occurred or what's in the book. And that's what it's all about, and that's where they're going to. So, I just kind of say, guys, let this story die. The president had a right. Okay, we made it. There was mistakes made. Everybody understands that. We're looking at lessons learned. Mission was an absolute success, which it was. President directed that. Done. Let's go to the next subject.
And, General
Kellogg, they haven't done that.
The amazing thing is that, once the president has spoken and once he called on Mike Waltz, the truth is that, Waltz put this thing together. Okay. We don't know how Goldberg's number got in there, but, this Signal chat is apparently loaded on all government phones. And most people that I know in the government are using that. But I understand once you get into the issue of having to parse, is it or isn't it, it's not a good thing. But I agree with you. Once the president came out and took responsibility, pointed to Waltz, Waltz said, he was going to get to the bottom of it or whatever. All Waltz has to say going forward is, we spoke about that. The president spoke about that. I have nothing further to say. And the fact that Waltz needed to go on air, even on Fox, even on, my own network, I'm like, why? Why? Yeah. It was like, it was more important that he protect his reputation than let the thing go. And that's when you start getting into the issue of, is there competition going on here? Or, what is, let's pull back the veil a little bit. Why are you out there? I think that doth protest too much. It would.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, here's what you nailed perfectly is, all of us work for the president of the United States, period. We support him, period. When he says you go left, you go left, you go right, or leave. It's not your individually reputation. It's the reputation of the president in the office. And he gave us the guidance. And I said, guys, follow the guidance. That's not hard to do. And move on. And that's, honestly, Judge, that's a little bit of my frustration with this is, you doth protest too much. Leave it alone.
I agree. And, the interesting thing is that the only time that Pete, defense secretary, has spoken is, they catch him coming on or off a plane. He's not like, let me get out there and do it. It's kind of interesting. I think that right now the focus is on Waltz, and we'll see what happens. But as President Trump has said, he's a good man. In any event, General Keith Kellogg, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your efforts, and we have tremendous respect for you. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Judge. Thanks for having me.
And up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, I will gavel out with my closing argument. It's all coming up here on the Red Apple Audio Network.
It's the Judge Jeanine Show.
Greg Kelly here with an urgent retirement warning. President Trump's return is set to usher in a new golden age, but growing trade tensions and China's ruthless attack on the dollar have rattled the markets. That's why Warren Buffett just dumped $133 billion in stocks. And so too have Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, and even Jamie Dimon, CEO of the world's largest bank. That's why thousands of informed IRA and 401k savers are now shielding their savings with gold. And the experts at Kellogg Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you to do the exact same thing, especially now after Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki warned of a coming market crash. So visit freegoldguide.com/Kelly or call 800-655-5186. You'll get a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your wealth with gold tax-free. Plus, see if you qualify for a free home safe and as much as $7,500 in free silver. Once again, that's freegoldguide.com/Kelly.